Solving quadratic equations by graphing. The graph of y equals x squared minus 6x plus 8 is given below. Use the graph to solve 3 equals x squared minus 6x plus 8. Notice in 1a the difference between the equation here and the equation here. We can see that y equals 3. So if we're trying to solve the equation 3 equals x squared minus 6x plus 8, we're trying to find the value or values of x that make the output of this function equal to 3. Or, if we're looking at the graph, we want to figure out what x's make the y equal to 3. Recall that the graph of a horizontal line has an equation such as y equals 3. So y equals 3 is this horizontal line. And we want to look at these 2 points, because for those 2 points, the x value gives a y value of 3. Notice that this x value is 1, and this x value is 5. So that means the solution, or solutions to this equation, are x equals 1 or 5. Take a moment, pause the video, and see if you can do problem 1b. Now, in 1b, y equals 0. So we're trying to find the values of x that make the y equal to 0. Y equals 0 would be the same as the x-axis. And the 2 values of x that make the y 0 are 2 and 4. So that means the solution to this equation, or the solutions, are 2 or 4. Now, 1c asks us to solve the 2 equations above algebraically and confirm the solutions you got in parts A and B. So in other words, I want you to take a moment, use your algebra skills to solve these 2 equations. So, solve the equation 3 equals x squared minus 6x plus 8, and use your algebra skills to solve 0 equals x squared minus 6x plus 8. Pause the video and try to solve those 2 equations algebraically. So to solve this first equation, I would start by getting one side of the equation equal to 0. I would do that by subtracting 3 from both sides. If we subtract 3 from both sides, we get 0 equals x squared minus 6x plus 2. I'm sorry, scratch that, plus 5. 8 minus 3 is 5, of course. Now, let's see if we can factor this equation. This equation would factor into x minus 5 and x minus 1. Now we can use the zero product property. If x minus 5 times x minus 1 equals 0, that means x minus 5 has to equal 0, or x minus 1 has to equal 0, which means that x has to be 5, or x has to be 1. Let's just scroll up and confirm that that's what we got in the first problem. Notice we got x is 1 or 5. So, our algebraic solution confirms that. Now let's solve this other equation. So, since this equation already equals 0, I'm going to go ahead and try to factor it as it is. So this would factor into x minus 4 times x minus 2. And again, using the zero product property, we can see that we would get x equals 4 or x equals 2. So once again, we can see that our algebraic solutions correspond to what we got using the graph. But obviously, if you're given the graph, it's much easier to look at the graph and determine these solutions than it is to use our algebra skills. Okay, go ahead and try 2a. Pause the video. So we're trying to solve the equation negative 1/2 times the quantity x plus 4 squared plus 5 equals 3. Notice that we're given the graph of y equals negative 1/2 times the quantity x plus 4 squared plus 5. So we want the y to equal 3. The graph of y equals 3 is this horizontal line, and the x values that correspond to those points are negative 6 and negative 2. So the solutions to this equation are x equals negative 6 or negative 2. For part B, pause the video and see if you can solve this equation algebraically. Now, for this equation, it's not in standard form as the equations were in problem number 1. And one way to solve this equation would be to expand the x plus 4 and simplify the left side, and then get one side equal to 0 and see if we can factor. But I think it's much easier to just simply go ahead and see if we can isolate the x. So to do that, I'm going to start by subtracting 5 from both sides. That would give us negative 2 on the right side. Now, in order to get rid of this negative 1/2, we could divide both sides by negative 1/2, but that would be equivalent to multiplying both sides by negative 2. Recall that dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So multiplying both sides by negative 2 would eliminate the negative 1/2 on the left side, and we would have x plus 4 squared equals 4. Now, we have a quantity squared equaling 4. We should ask ourselves, what squared equals 4? Well, the answer is 2 or negative 2. But in this case, it's not that x equals 2 or x equals negative 2, but rather x plus 4 equals 2 or x plus 4 equals negative 2, because this whole quantity must be 2 or this whole quantity must be negative 2, because 2 squared equals 4 or negative 2 squared equals 4. And if x plus 4 equals 2, that means x equals negative 2. And if x plus 4 equals negative 2, then x equals negative 6. Once again, notice that our algebraic solutions correspond to our graphical solutions, or the solutions we got by using the graph. So, if you are trying to solve an equation graphically, you're trying to find the values of the input that make the output equal to some constant. So think about the graph of y equals that constant and find the values of x that make that equation true. Now, in the future, you might not be given these graphs. You could take this and graph it yourself, of course. And you could do that using a graphing calculator, or if you know how to make a graph in this form, you could do that by hand.